calling on the President to give an opening remarks or welcome address by our dear President, our very own dear Miss Florence Atuluku. Thank you.
Justice. Justice. Speaker, our honorable guest speaker today, Bernard Silk, my distinguished elders in the House, permit me to stand on existing protocol. And on behalf of the National Association of Catholic Lawyers, Lagos Archdiocese, I extend a heartfelt welcome to this timely and consequential conference titled Strong Institutions as Enablers of Democracy. We convene at a pivotal juncture, one that calls for reflection, reckoning, renewed resolve across Nigeria and beyond democratic systems. Democratic systems are under strain, not only from political turbulence, but from the fragility of the institutions charged with upholding justice, equity, and the rule of law. As legal professionals and civic-minded citizens, stakeholders, our duty transcends interpretation of statutes. It demands a steadfast commitment to the moral, ethical foundations upon which just societies are built. This annual conference is more than a tradition. It is a mission-driven platform for rigorous engagement with the legal, ethical, and societal challenges shaping our nation. It fosters dialogue, deepens our sense of professional responsibility, and promotes justice, rooted in values that rise above faith and ideology. At the heart of our association's work is a commitment to pro bono legal service, advocating for the indigent and vulnerable, amplifying the voices of the unheard, and defending the rights of those most at risk. This year's theme, Strong Institutions as Enablers of Democracy, resonates deeply with our mission. There is an undeniable synergy between institutional strength and the pursuit of governance. When institutions, judicial, electoral, legislative, and security operate with integrity, transparency, and accountability, they lay the foundation for governance that serves the common good. Conversely, weak institutions breed injustice, exclusion, and impunity. Strong institutions protect rights, uphold dignity, and ensure that even the most marginalized have access to justice. This gathering brings together a rich tapestry of voices, legal minds, electoral experts, security professionals, civil society advocates, and engaged citizens. It affirms our shared belief that democracy is not just sustained by elections alone, but by the integrity of the institutions that safeguard its values. During this conference, we will confront themes central to our national experience: the credibility of electoral bodies, the independence of the judiciary, the impartiality of security forces, and the lived realities of the Nigerian electorate. These are not abstract ideals. They are the pillars upon which our democracy stands and falters. Let this gathering today be a space for honest dialogue, courageous critique, and visionary thinking. Let us speak not only as professionals, but as citizens, stakeholders, committed to building a Nigeria where institutions serve the people, not the powerful, where justice is neither delayed or denied, and where democracy is not a distant aspiration, but a lived reality. In closing, let us remember that our vocation, whether as lawyers, advocates, engaged citizens, is not merely a profession. It is a mission to uphold truth, defend the vulnerable, and ensure that the law remains a servant of justice, not a tool of oppression. May our deliberations today ignite a renewed commitment to institutional integrity and democratic values. May we leave here not only informed, but inspired to act with courage, conviction, and compassion. On this note, I may not be able to do this again today. I seize this opportunity to appreciate our keynote speaker, Reverend Father Professor Anthony Alaba Akinwale, for honoring our invitation, and also to seize this opportunity to say, Father, congratulations for the recent elevation as the Vice Chancellor of Boston University. We appreciate your support for NACL over the years. The journey started long before 2023. You've remained with us, and my sounding board, my mentor, and I must confess that for every theme and that we've had since 2023, I circle back to Prof. Father, we have a conversation and look at issues disturbing our nations. And he's always there. I called on him at a very short notice, and he accepted. Thank you, Father. To our distinguished panelists, Major General Bingi, Aken Bingi, thank you. We've not met before. I just got a reference from a colleague. I called you and you answered. You were supposed to be with us to debate. Unfortunately, you have another engagement in Abuja that kept you away. But we prayed and agreed that even though we are not here in person, we'll still deliver. And to Dr. Chukwuemeka Buaja, thank you. Again, not met you before. Based on reference, we reached out to you and you accepted. Thank you and God bless you as we sit and then listen to your experience, especially from the INEC perspective today. And my big sister, mentor, cheerleader, Titilola Akinlamo SAN. You've been part of the journey long before now. Thank you for always being there. And you're not supposed to be in Lagos today, but you have to come to Lagos. Say, Florence, you are the only person that can do this to me. I say yes, and rightfully so. I own the right. Thank you. Thank you for honoring our invitation. Thank you for the support for NACL. Thank you for participating in our pro bono activities. And to my brother, Deborahs, is he in the room yet? Okay, he sent a message a while ago that he was on his way. Deborahs too, as a part of the journey. Okay. has been part of the journey, and he was a moderator for 2023 and 2024. But for this year, we decided I should take the hot seat because he's used to disturbing people and shaking the table. We want to get his perspective from the inside today. So we look forward to having him on board. And then my brother, Charles Ajiboye, I reached out to him just a few days ago, and he said, "My president, yes, I'll do it." Thank you, Charles, for honoring our invitation. Thank you for the support, and we look forward to you shaking the table today. Thank you. So on that note, I say thank you all for your presence, for your passion, and your unwavering dedication to the cause of justice and democracy. As you sit down today, let us be part of the conversation. Let us not just sit and listen to the panelists, to the keynote address. Let us add our voices. I look forward to hearing from my brother, Chris Agaonu. Thank you, and word of information for your active participation. And I make it bold to say that of all the bar forums branches in Lagos, they are the only ones that are here today, representing in full as a body. I appreciate the support, and I look forward to saying a word of in branch before the end of the year. By the grace of God. Okay, so let us go forth, united in purpose and strengthened by grace. Thank you. Justice.
Rise.
Thank you, dear President, for your welcome address.
Content. This is the second one. The first one was I was sending correspondence into Justice Gabriel Belgium, and I was redirected. I apologize, and now I've committed another one. My Lord, I plead for mercy. It was not deliberate. So, I appreciate the presence of the Lord Justice Matthias Belgium. We've been part of our journeys again over the years, attending our events quietly and stepping aside quietly. But for this year, we decided that the Lord should come and take the seat. We want to hear from him. I reached out to him again, even despite the missteps of mixing and correspondence. We had a conversation and he accepted to be here today. Was one of the first to be in the room. So how I visited the misstep again, please, I plead for mercy once again, and thank you for honoring our invitation, and we look forward to stronger collaboration with you and the Lagos State Judiciary. Thank you, the Lord.
Thank you, Madam President, once again.
And thank you, the Lord, for accepting the.
Should I say apology? Yeah, okay, that's all right.
Thank you. For mercy, plead for mercy.
That was a matter of the struck out. That's all right. Thank you so much. So while our president was giving our welcome address, dear Nnamdi Udu, Victor Osifo, Femi Fajolu, Paul Oyejose, dear Philip Njitene, that's the National Secretary of the Association, and Celestine Uwanko all walked into the hall. Thank you so much and welcome once again. Without wasting much time, we'll be calling on Ms. Geraldine Wade, the past president of the association, to give the goodwill message from the national president. Thank you. Welcome on board.
Thank you very much, Almond. It is my pleasure to stand before this august body and bring the goodwill of the National Executive and particularly the National President, Mr. Edward Oga. Unfortunately, he's unable to be here today, but his thoughts are with us here. And not only am I here, the first National Vice President is also present, Mr. Eric Ife. So he's also in our midst. Thank you all for coming, and I'll just go through the goodwill message or parts of it as quickly as possible. Goodwill message of the National President of the National Association of Public Lawyers, Edward Energy Oga, Esquire, on the occasion of the third annual conference of the NACL Lagos chapter on the theme, Strong Institutions as Enablers of Democracy. We, the people, are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. Abraham Lincoln. May I most respectfully congratulate and felicitate the Archdiocesan President and the entire membership of the National Association of Public Lawyers, Lagos Archdiocese, on the auspicious occasion of the 2025 annual conference. NACL Lagos has been at the forefront and is one of the indispensable pillars of the association in Nigeria. I encourage you to continue to keep the flag of NACL flying onto lofty heights, not only in socio-political matters, but also in religio-spiritual affairs. As a nation and as a people, the theme for this third annual conference, which is Strong Institutions as Enablers of Democracy, offers us another opportunity for reflective introspection into our democratic experience. I must commend the President of NACL Lagos and indeed the organizers for the choice of this theme, as there is no better way of arousing the consciousness of especially the political class in Nigeria that have, over time in our democratic experience, built strong men and women instead of strong institutions, and who have destroyed the very fabric of democracy in Nigeria. Democracy, by its nature, thrives on institutions that are essentially people-oriented, people-based, and people-centered. Advanced democracies were built on strong institutions rather than strong individuals. Indeed, the life wire of any democracy is strong institutions, but having selfishly appropriated, nay, misappropriated to themselves the Commonwealth and making themselves demigods and political godfathers, the political class have sacrificed accountability, good governance, and the welfare of the people, and have alienated and dehumanized the very people whom they rose to the positions of prominence they occupy. Can we really imagine the value of strong institutions in our democracy? A democracy in which there is rule of law and the executives act only according to law. A democracy where the legislature is truly independent and not a rubber stamp of the president. A democracy where there is an independent judiciary, which is true to its name, as the last hope of the common man, and where human rights are guaranteed. A judiciary free from unholy pressures and manipulations from the powers that be within the social, political, and economic space. Wow, what a great country Nigeria would become. As we reflect on all this all-important theme of the conference, I invite us all to be personally committed to the advancement of strong institutions that would strengthen the foundations of transparency, accountability, and good governance, and that would enable our democracy not only to thrive, but also to be the envy of the other nations in the world. I trust that speakers and the various animators of the conference will do justice to the theme, and that each one of us will go home from here with a new mindset of building enduring democratic institutions that would advance the common good of all humanity. It is possible even in our own generation. I wish us all a beautiful conference that is capable of giving birth to a new and better Nigeria. God bless us all. Thank you. Justice through Christ. And that is the message of the National President, Mr. Edward Oga. In my own capacity as the second Vice President National, I also welcome you all to this conference because I'm also a member of the Lagos Archdiocese. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, dear National Vice President, giving a goodwill message on behalf of our National President. So at this time, we'll be moving straight to the keynote address, which is one of the reasons why we are here. And we'll be welcoming, if I'm privileged to welcome our dear, very Reverend Father Professor Anthony Akinwale, Alaba Akinwale, OP, PhD, STM. He is the current Vice Chancellor of our Augustine University, Ilare Ekpe, Lagos State. Thank you so much, Father. Please start and welcome at this time our keynote speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. Let me begin on a note of gratitude, dear members of the National Association of Catholic Lawyers in Lagos Archdiocese. Gratitude for inviting me to be your keynote speaker this morning. I deeply appreciate the privilege. Added to that gratitude is my admiration for your association. I'm always thrilled when I find Catholic professionals come together in an association of this kind. The fact that there is such an association as the National Association of Catholic Lawyers offers me a great deal of consolation when I think of the massive violation of human rights and justice in our beloved country, Nigeria. So thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you for your congratulatory message on my appointment as Vice Chancellor of Augustine University. We hope that within the next 2 years, we'll be able to start our Faculty of Law. The building is under construction. It's been donated by someone, but you know the economic climate is very hostile. So building under construction or construction work has stalled for some time now. We hope that we'll resume that very soon. I'll leave here almost immediately after my speech to head back for Ekpe because I have a very crucial meeting with 2 committees of council today on the issue of infrastructure. I'll say, without being shy, we need your support. It's not to ask for donation. Come and invest. Your parishes are already doing that. Church of Assumption, Our Lady of Perpetual Help of Victoria Island, thanks to these 2 parishes, we'll be able to admit more students this year because they are building 2 very fine hostels there. They look like Sheraton Hotel. I feel like going back to school. So I'll be asking of you to do similar things like that as individuals and as an association. Not to donate, build, operate, and transfer. And I think you can do that as an association. I leave it at that. You know, vice chancellors are beggars. I'm a Dominican. Dominicans are beggars. We're called a mendicant order in the Catholic Church. See the hood the Dominican puts on. When we go about begging, we keep the money here. But I'm not begging for money. Just come and invest. I'm throwing that at you as a point of interest, and I'm sure you will respond. Now to my keynote speech. Let me begin at home with St. Augustine of Hippo, who in his work, City of God, explored a definition for people which ought to retain our attention. According to this definition, a people is the association of a multitude of rational beings united by a common agreement on the object of their love. That definition enables us to understand what a nation is. I always say there's a difference between a nation, a country, and a state. A nation is an association of rational beings who share core values. On the basis of their shared core values, members of the association that a nation is write themselves a constitution and come to a common agreement to use the constitution to regulate their relationship as they pursue those shared core values. The constitution of their association establishes a government that is a conglomeration of institutions, that is organs of government that provide security for members of an association that a nation is. These institutions enable the government to function so as to protect the people in their pursuit of their shared core values. These institutions are instruments in the hands of government, and government is itself an instrument in the hands of the people for their protection as they pursue their shared core values. Without a common agreement on shared core values reflected in the provisions of their constitution, without the use of a constitution that has provided protective and not oppressive institutions, there is no democratically governed nation in the true sense of the word. What obtains is a state governed by a constitution decreed into existence without the consent of the people, such as our current constitution. An oppressive state held together at gunpoint, as I often describe Nigeria. Its institutions will be anything but friendly. Such is the case where organs of government disable the governed rather than enable them to actualize their developmental potential. Such is the absence of democracy. Today, democracies are threatened, and the threat is from within. Threatened not only in Nigeria, we all see what is happening in the United States since King Donald Trump assumed office. That threat is vividly illustrated in the book How Democracies Die, subtitled What History Reveals About Our Future, co-authored by Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt, where these worrisome words can be found. And I quote, "The tragic paradox of the electoral route to authoritarianism is that democracy's assassins use the very institutions of democracy gradually subtly, and even legally to kill it. End of quote. The paradox in the betrayal of democracy is that quite often enemies of democracy are democratically elected. Having assumed office through democratic means, they turn around to use democratic means undemocratically to assassinate democracy. That happens either because there are no institutions to sustain democracy, or because such institutions have been weakened by strong men and strong women too, by their strategy and tactics in the arena of public life. It is the paradox of exercising legitimate authority illegitimately, of using what is legitimate to procure what is illegitimate. A land of weakened institutions is a land where reins of government are in the hands of strong men and absurdity is elevated into public policy. It is my contention that where and when democratic institutions are weakened, the people are disabled and their capacity to flourish is eroded by the whims and caprices of strong men and strong women. A trip down memory lane to a neighboring African country may be helpful in providing an illustration that such has been the story in virtually every African country. On July 11, 2009, President Barack Obama, while visiting Ghana, addressed the Ghanaian parliament. But his address was not just to his Ghanaian audience, it was meant for the whole of Africa. On that occasion, Obama spoke for democracy. Let me say here, by way of digression, that the jury is still out on Obama's own legacy, especially as it concerns his respect or lack of it for freedom to hold and express religious convictions in the United States he led for 8 years. There is also the opinion, and there is the suspicion, that he interfered with Nigeria's electoral process in 2015 by helping to enthrone a strong man. But let us put that aside for another day. Let us instead take a look at the thrust of his speech before the Ghanaian parliament. To Ghanaian parliamentarians, he said, among other things, and I quote, "Time and again, Ghanaians have chosen constitutional rule over autocracy and shown a democratic spirit that allows the energy of your people to break through. We see that in leaders who accept defeat graciously. The fact that President Mills's opponents were standing beside him last night to greet me when I came off the plane spoke volumes about Ghana. Victors who resist calls to wield power against the opposition in unfair ways. We see that spirit in courageous journalists, in policemen and women. We see it in the young people who are speaking up against patronage and participating in the political process. Across Africa, we've seen countless examples of people taking control of their destiny and making change from the bottom up. We saw it in Kenya, where civil society and business came together to help stop post-election violence. We saw it in South Africa, where over 3/4 of the country voted in the recent election, the fourth since the end of apartheid. We saw it in Zimbabwe, where the Election Support Network braved brutal repression to stand up for the principle that a person's vote is a sacred right. Now, make no mistake, history is on the side of these brave Africans, not with those who use coups or change constitutions to stay in power. Africa doesn't need strong men, it needs a strong institution. Earlier in the same address, Obama had said, "This is a new moment of great promise. Only this time we've learned that it will not be giants like Nkrumah and Kenyatta who will determine Africa's future. Instead, it will be you, the men and women in Ghana's parliament, the people you represent. It will be the young people brimming with talent and energy and hope who can claim the future that so many in previous generations never realized." When Jerry John Rawlings died on November 12, 2020, my mind went back to that speech of Barack Obama. Two propositions in that speech have always retained my attention. The first is that in which he said, "Africa does not need strong men, it needs strong institutions." The second is the one in which he said, "The future of Africa will not be determined by giants like Nkrumah and Kenyatta." To those who are familiar with the Nigerian journalistic scene in the 1980s, during the era of Ibrahim Babangida, reading through my texts, you will know that I'm using the Afghanistan method. I do not know if Obama had the two men, Nkrumah and Rawlings, in mind when he uttered those words. What I know is that in his audience, as he addressed the Ghanaian parliament, were men and women conversant with the history of Ghana. In that history, Nkrumah and Rawlings stood out as strong men, to use Obama's words. And to that extent, Obama's address to the Ghanaian parliament sounded like an allusion to Nkrumah and Rawlings. Nkrumah fought for the independence of Ghana, became her first prime minister, and was a strong leader with a vision. But Nkrumah, the strong man, stifled opposition, turning Ghana not into a one-party state, but into a one-man state, which is what autocracy is. Autocracy is the rule of one man who has succeeded in convincing or intimidating the people into believing that he has undergone an apotheosis. Autocracy represses the democratic spirit that releases developmental energy in peoples. With their developmental energy released, their land becomes a habitation of persons of actualized potentials. One major factor that has weakened and continues to weaken democracy in Africa, contributing to the underdevelopment of the continent, is that Africans have had and still have too many autocratic rulers. Such rulers might have acted and might be acting with good intentions, but autocracy manifests itself in paternalism, a totalitarian and tyrannical paternalism that insists that all must think like the leader, who is presumed to be an unquestionable and infallible strategist, simply because he is the leader. Let me remind my audience that this Ghanaian narrative is only an illustration of what is in fact a continental narrative. Ghana not unlike many African countries, including Nigeria, has had a history of being on the receiving end of autocratic rulers in military and civilian dresses. In Ghana, after Nkrumah, not immediately though, was Jerry Rawlings, who presented himself as an anti-corruption crusader. At his first coming, he entered the political landscape of Ghana through a coup d'etat. He overthrew a military government led by General Frederick Akuffo, who, in a palace coup, had earlier overthrown General Ignatius Achapon. At the end of his first coming, Rawlings organized elections won by Ila Lehman, who took over from Rawlings on September 24, 1979, a week before President Shehu Shagari took over from General Olusegun Obasanjo in Nigeria. President Lehman's government was like a government on probation, with Rawlings as probation officer. For shortly after handing over to Lehman, on December 31, 1981, Rawlings staged a second comeback. He staged another military coup that truncated the Lehman administration. His second coming was longer than his first coming. By the time he organized elections to return the country to democratic rule, not only was he presidential candidate, he had no strong opponents. His reign had been so repressive that no strong opponents could have emerged. So, Rawlings was elected civilian president. Like Nkrumah, who governed Ghana with iron fists, Rawlings was brutal in dealing with dissenting opinions. It was dangerous to disagree with both men. They both imposed their idea of governance on the people. Many young Africans of today only read about them, if at all they read, and not concentrate on watching movies. Many see them as heroes. Nkrumah and Rawlings represent two of the many instances of apotheosis of the African strongman leader. But I shall focus more on Rawlings. It was quite significant that Jerry Rawlings died shortly after the EndSARS protest in Nigeria. The EndSARS protests represented a repudiation of police and military brutality in Nigeria. But the problem was neither SARS nor the Nigerian police. The problem was, and still is, ultimately, the relationship between the government and the citizen, and ultimately, the Constitution. The purpose of government is to protect the rights of the citizen. The purpose of the Constitution is to establish institutions which ought to be used as instruments to protect the citizen. But here there is a double jeopardy. The 1999 Constitution, an identical twin sister of the 1979 Constitution, is weak. And this weak Constitution has established weak institutions incapable of protecting the citizen from the rule of the strongman. That is why successive governments in Nigeria have been accused of being at the vanguard of human rights violation in Nigeria. We still carry on as if we were under military rule. If government is at the vanguard of human rights violation, then the police, more specifically SARS, will violate the rights of Nigerians. And we must add, it is not just the police. Nigerians are at the mercy of government and its officials at various levels and in every institution of government. And Nigerians are at the mercy of one another. Police officers are agents of the state. What is at stake is a relationship between the government and the citizen. What kind of state do we have? What kind of state has the 1999 Constitution created in Nigeria? Is it a friendly state? Is it a state that respects the citizen? The police is your friend, so says a slogan. But whoever believes that slogan will believe anything. It is one of the most cynical lies ever told to Nigerians. The Nigerian driving through police checkpoints knows that the police is not his friend because the state whose agent the police is not his friend. If you have an unfriendly government, then you will have unfriendly government agencies. If you have an unfriendly state, you will have an unfriendly police. Police brutality in Nigeria is a symptom of impunity by government. In a country where impunity is paraded as governance, police brutality cannot be addressed by a presidential directive issued to the Inspector General of Police. It is one of the many symptoms of our dysfunctional constitution. We have ended up with a hostile state because we have a hostile constitution. The 1999 Constitution sets up Nigeria in such a way that government is more powerful than the citizen. That is why the problem is not the police, not the judiciary, not the legislature, not the executive arm of government, but a weak constitution that has engendered weak institutions. The urgent task before us is to re-envision our society, re-envision and rewrite our constitution, rediscover what it means to be a nation, re-envision the place. Not to embark on this task is to continue to beat about the bush. It is becoming increasingly clear that you cannot secure a country so vast and so populous as Nigeria with weak institutions controlled from Abuja. The brutality of the police and the military illustrates a lamentable absence of institutions capable of protecting the citizen. The military and the police are agencies of a strongman state. Rawlings represented the ambiguity of military rule and its attendant brutality in Africa. Many instances can be cited to buttress this assertion. The first instance, upon coming into power through a military coup on June 4, 1979, after an unsuccessful coup on March 15, 1979, an unsuccessful coup that ended in a death sentence, Rawlings and the military junta he headed lined up 8 military officers, including 3 former military rulers of Ghana, and they executed them by firing squad upon allegations of corruption. This is not an attempt to say the men were innocent. This is to express profound regret that these men were not given proper trial. Corruption is lawlessness. You cannot fight lawlessness with lawlessness. You have to fight corruption within the ambit of the law. You have to be just to the unjust. Because if you are unjust to the unjust and you get away with it, you will one day be unjust to the just. That can only happen where either there are no democratic institutions or democratic institutions have been weakened by a rule of the strong man. Rawlings later embarked on what he called a house cleaning exercise involving the killings and abduction of over 300 Ghanaians. But many Ghanaians applauded their execution, believing such arbitrary shedding of blood would put an end to corruption. His initials, JJ, became known as Junior Jesus. But when things became hot, students of the University of Lagos turned those initials into Junior Julius. A second instance, and this will interest you, on a particular evening during the second reign of Rawlins, 3 Supreme Court justices were abducted about the same time, only for their corpses to be found later. Also secretly killed were military officers. Rawlins was never able to deny his role until he died. He was never held accountable. When he was interviewed by the BBC on the episode, he was evasive. A fourth instance, the editor of the Catholic newspaper in Ghana, Father Charles Allen, now Archbishop of Cape Coast, was a target of Rawlins' death squad. Searching for him to kill him, the death squad found a religious brother of the Society of Divine Wealth who looked like Father Palmer and killed him. For days, these religious brothers' whereabouts were unknown to the church in Ghana. By the time his corpse was found, it was in an advanced state of decomposition. He was buried before the Mass, as his body could not be taken into the church. Let me say in passing that Rawlins was stabbed. A fourth instance, when Rawlins metamorphosed into a civilian president, he physically assaulted his deputy during a cabinet meeting. The poor vice president reported the matter to the police. But in Africa, leaders are above the law because Africa is under the rule of strong men, not under the rule of just laws. I remember former Prime Minister of Zaire, today's Congo, Mbuzakal Ivan, who was arrested, sentenced to death on charges that he tried to overthrow Mobutu Sese Seko. Foreign powers like Belgium and France pleaded on his behalf, so he was spared. Went to live in exile in Belgium, and probably because he ran out of funds or because he was so sick, he needed to return to Kinshasa. So he started saying beautiful things about the man who wanted him dead. And the journalist asked him, what has changed? He used to say negative things about this man, he sentenced him to death. Now you are saying nice things about him. He responded in French. En Afrique, on ne dit pas le chef. In Africa, we don't say bad things about the chief. A fifth instance, on June 8, 1998, when Sani Abacha died, the BBC interviewed Rawlins. During the interview, Rawlins wept and sobbed over the loss of a man he described as a good African leader. But Abacha visited untold brutality on Nigerians. Rawlins' economic policy of state-controlled economy, his imposition of price control in particular, turned out to be misguided and ruinous. Seeing the catastrophic consequences, he who would not tolerate any opposition to this policy later embraced a free market economy in 1992. But not until after he silenced all opposition to his erstwhile misguided economic policies. His imposition of unrealistic economic policies exemplifies the philosophy that says power is knowledge. It ought to be that knowledge is power. That precisely is what has kept Africa down for centuries, right from pre-colonial days, because our problem did not begin with colonization. Our problems were there before the white man came. Despite his less than sterling human rights record, as could be seen in the gratuitous shedding of blood narrated above, he is spoken of in laudatory terms by his many supporters. Indeed, there have been many times some Nigerians, out of frustration over corruption, expressed a wish for what they call a rolling solution. Corruption becomes an excuse for tyranny in a futile search for an illusory, benevolent dictator. But in Africa, we can and we must fight corruption through legal means, not by breaking the law, through institutions that are independent of the whims and caprices of strong men. Apart from Rawlings, another poster boy for revolution in Africa is Thomas Sankara and his latest successor, Ibrahim Traore. As a young army officer, Captain Sankara and his friend, Blaise Compaoré, overthrew the government of the then Upper Volta and changed the name of the country to Burkina Faso. Later on, in a tragic turn of the juvenile military adventure, Compaoré would kill Sankara in a bloody palace coup. But on this continent of deified rulers, so much myth has been built and peddled around Sankara, and even more sophisticated myth is disseminated in social media about his successor, Ibrahim Traore, who is often portrayed, thanks to what is wrongly called artificial intelligence, falsely portrayed as addressing his compatriots in the English language, whereas Burkina Faso is a francophone country. And when I read through social media, and I see how young Nigerians and young Africans are eulogizing him, I look at the names of the people eulogizing him or condemning him. Curiously, no Burkinabe writes about it. No. And that says a lot. Burkinabe are neither praising nor condemning him. The people eulogizing him are non-Burkinabe. I had a conversation with a religious sister from Burkina Faso some months ago. When I made this remark, she smiled. She said, if you ever say anything contrary to what Traore said, disappear. But it's being eulogized in social media by young Nigerians. This is not to pass a judgment on Rawlings and other members of the clan of tyrants who have ruled and are still ruling and growing in Africa. This is to set the record straight. It is to submit that strong men and brutal dictators should not be presented as role models to all Africans. They might have had a good intention of fighting corruption, but good intention alone does not suffice. We Africans must learn to hold our leaders accountable. We must rise above our hunger and thirst for messiahs and learn to take responsibility for the common good. Intelligent regulation of our common life must not be outsourced to messiahs. It is in fact the case that the messiahs to which we love to outsource our land end up as strong men with a sense of entitlement. Let us return to Obama's speech before the Ghanaian parliament. Repeatedly insisting on the need for good governance and strong institutions to facilitate the development of Africa, he went on to say, in the 21st century, capable, reliable, and transparent institutions are the key to success. Strong parliaments, honest police forces, independent judges, an independent press, a vibrant private sector, a civil society. Those are the things that give life to democracy, because that is what matters in people's everyday lives. With strong institutions and a strong will, I know that Africans can live their dreams in Nairobi and Lagos, Kigali, Kinshasa, Harare, and right here in Accra. And so, to Ghanaians and through them to the rest of Africa, he spoke these words. We must first recognize the fundamental truth that you have to give life to in Ghana. Development depends on good governance. That is the ingredient which has been missing in far too many places for far too long. That's the change that can unlock Africa's potential. And that is a responsibility that can only be met by Africans. End of quote. It is not difficult to agree with President Obama that absence of such institutions is largely accountable for unaddressed and unmet developmental needs on this continent. Such institutions exist to secure the rights that belong to the human person as a human person and as a citizen. They secure the environment in which he or she can seek to fulfill legitimate aspirations and actualize potentials. People everywhere should have the right to start a business or get an education without paying the bribe, says Obama. The problem with the government of strong men is that it is predicated on the twin principle that power is knowledge and the strong man is omniscient. Not only does he know it all, he monopolizes wisdom and patriotism. We have seen that in recent and distant memory on the African continent. Since he wields the biggest stake among those contesting for power, he stages a coup d'etat or rigs at an election, or stages a coup d'etat so as to become the major contender in an election he organizes. He does not get into office with people's votes, so he is not accountable to them. He comes in by force and maintains his hold on power by force. If he is not in government, he sponsors some others to get into government and pay him tithes taken from public office. The strong man is nothing but a tyrant, a self-imposing benefactor, paternalistic and condescending in his style of leadership. The strong man sees himself as above the law. In fact, he breaks the law and gets away with it. He has power over life and death, or so he believes, and distributes patronage by distributing appointments and contracts. He builds or encourages the building of a personality cult around him. He is, as Mobutu Sese Seko was called, father of the nation, a light to guide. The strong man brokers no divergent opinion. He settles and stifles the opposition. And for this reason, he ends up surrounding himself with sycophants and court jesters, with yes men and yes women who glorify his incompetence, eulogize his tyranny, canonize his corruption, and beg him to institute the process of general elimination. That Africa has had and continues to have many of such strong men is likely responsible for the sorry state of the continent today. And that is why Africans can no longer blame the colonial past or the colonials. Now, while that statement is true, it is somewhat misleading. In fact, a number of commentators have rightly observed that while Obama's speech proposes to find a way forward for Africa, he appears to have glossed over the role of America and other superpowers in installing and supporting corrupt, incompetent, and bloodthirsty regimes, strong men, to use his own words, whose interests never coincided with the interests of the people. How, for example, can one ever get over the romance between Mobutu Sese Seko, erstwhile duane of corruption and despotism in Africa, once described by former President Reagan as, quote, America's best ally since the days of President Lyndon Johnson, end of quote. Whether the situation has changed in the Congo is a matter to be debated. But history shows that in the 1960s, the decade in which many African states hoisted their flags in place of the colonizers' flags, Africa indeed graduated from the reign of strong white men to the reign of strong black men, some of whom were assisted in infamy by colonial powers during the Cold War. President Obama's speech certainly has the potential to inspire and galvanize. He said, I am particularly speaking to the young people all across Africa and right here in Ghana. In places like Ghana, young people make up over half of the population. And here is what you must know. The world will be what you make of it. You have the power to hold your leaders accountable and to build institutions that serve the people. You can serve in your communities and harness your energy and education to create new wealth and build new connections to the world. You can conquer disease and end conflicts and make change from the bottom up. You can do that. Yes, you can. Because in this moment, history is on the end of the post. If this dream is to come true, indeed, we need strong institutions and not strong men. Africa needs leaders who enable, not leaders who disable. Yet, as intelligent and admirably inspiring as it is, there is something incomplete in this Obama recipe. Strong institutions are necessary for development, but they are in themselves insufficient. They would be able to facilitate integral development if they would be imbued with deep spiritual and moral values. Institutions without morality are dangerously inimical to the dignity of the human person. But the level of morality of institutions is a direct reflection of the level of morality and the depth of spirituality of the human beings who man these institutions. When President Obama spoke of strong institutions, he listed strong parliaments, honest police forces, independent judges, an independent press, a vibrant private sector, a civil society. But institutions are creations of human beings. They are instruments in the hands of human beings. That is why we must also be vigilant and prudent in our leadership selection process. If you have good institutions and you do not have competent men and women to man them, you are like somebody who has bought a flashy car but whose driver is unable to drive. It is a matter of ensuring that we must not only create strong institutions, we must also ensure that those who man them are strong in the sense of possessing requisite competence to man them. A morally depraved generation can neither put in place nor maintain good institutions. The personal moral life of members of parliament, policemen and judges, journalists and directors in the private sector is of vital importance if institutions are to protect and promote the dignity and the rights of persons. If the people who man our institutions are corrupt and incompetent, such strong institutions enslave even more than strong men. It is therefore of utmost importance that those who man our institutions be men and women of intellectual, administrative, and ethical competence. If such men and women are to be formed and found, education at all levels must be given its pride of place in our country, Nigeria. If I may end on an autobiographical note, it is precisely because I believe in this that I have put my head in the business of tertiary education in Nigeria. It is the engine room of development. In 1982, when Pope John Paul II visited Nigeria for the first time, one of the masses he said was for the Nigerian university community. That mass was at the University of Ibadan. I would ask you to go on the Vatican website and read the beautiful homily he gave on that occasion, in which he said, among other things, that if Nigerians want to build a humane society, then they must pay attention to good quality education. That will be our investment. Necessary investment if we're to create a society that is stable and prosperous, a society without insecurity. From time to time, our students at Augustine University put this question to me. Father, we heard you studied in America. Why did you come back? Well, I came back when it was tough. I came back during the dark days of Abacha's military rule. I narrowly escaped being killed by 4 policemen who demanded $200 from me and I refused, who cocked their guns and I didn't move. I ended up giving the money to them because the seminarian who came to pick me at the airport said, if you don't do it, they will kill both of us and say armed robbers killed us. At that point, I remembered the words of Bob Marley, one of his songs, he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. By the grace of God, I lived to fight another day, and they ended up in custody. I am a fighter, I will remain a fighter. That's why I came back to Nigeria. I love Nigeria. I'm not proud of Nigeria, but I love Nigeria. And as I said to our students, I came back because 1, I love Nigeria. 2, I love the church in Nigeria. 3, I love my family in Nigeria. Will Nigeria change in my lifetime? Will Nigeria be where I would like Nigeria to be in my lifetime? I doubt. Because I think it will take not less than 30 years. And I'll be lucky to have 30 years added to my span. Thank you very much for listening.